All right, let's take you now to Zimbabwe, where more than a year into the coronavirus pandemic, the African continent is fully vaccinated. Only 3% of its 1.2 billion people. Now, at this rate, it appears that neither the African Union's goal of 60% vaccination by 2023, nor the global vaccine distribution mechanism, that is the COVAX goal of 20% by 2022, will be reached in time.
Now, efforts are being made to ramp up production of the COVID-19 vaccines in Africa to address the continent's low rate of vaccinations. Now, as of September this year, there are at least 12 COVID-19 production facilities set up or in pipeline across 6 African countries. Now, one of such facilities is in Zimbabwe, where a call for Zimbabweans 18 years and older have the chance to take part of a great opportunity to contribute to COVID-19 vaccination research and innovation. Now, in other words, Zimbabwe is set to launch its own vaccine called Zimcovax, Oluchi. Zimcovax.
Zimcovax. Well, joining us this morning all the way from Zimbabwe is CEO and founder of Charles River Medical Group. We have Dr. TARIRO MAKADZANGE, and she is a doctor that will be talking very much on this topic. Very good welcome, and thank you for joining the program. Now, can you kindly shed more light on this Zimcovax and what the trials mean?
Great. Thank you very much for having me. So the Zimcovax is a vaccine research study. So to clarify, it's not a vaccine manufacturing, it is testing a vaccine. And as you know, most of the vaccine trials that have taken place have mostly been outside of Africa, with some trials in South Africa. And so we're very excited to be part of introducing vaccine clinical trials in Africa for COVID-19. For Zimbabwe, this is the first COVID-19 vaccine trial that will take place in Zimbabwe. The nice thing about this vaccine, which is manufactured by the Serum Institute of India, is that it is a protein subunit vaccine based on the hepatitis B vaccine that many of us received as children, but now also expressing COVID-19 antigens. In particular, the original Wuhan strain antigen and the beta variant, or what was inappropriately formerly known as the first South African variant. So we are testing a bivariant vaccine in COVID-19 vaccine trials, and really excited to bring COVID-19 vaccine trials to Zimbabwe and initiating this vaccine research study.
All right, Dr. Mazange. We need to ask you this. So this is a vaccine trial research. So what's the sample size? What's the sample size that we're looking at here? Because Zimbabwe is not one of the most populated African countries. So what's the size of the samples, that we can have?
Great question. So this is a phase 1-2 vaccine trial. And in the first phases of any vaccine trial, what we're trying to understand is the safety as well as the immunogenicity of the vaccine. So these are typically done in relatively small numbers of patients. So the phase 1 will have 70 patients, and the phase 2 will have 280 patients. And from this data, we will get a very good sense of what the safety is and some data on the immunogenicity. To really determine the efficacy, at least at the moment in vaccine trials, you then go on to do studies that often need thousands of patients. Zimbabwe is large enough to take on a phase 3 study, and those are typically multi-center trials with thousands of patients. What we hope eventually in COVID globally is that once we start to understand the correlates of immunity better, we can get to that phase 3 with smaller sample sizes and really focus on the immunogenicity to help regulators decide whether or not a vaccine is ready for approval.
Right. Now, doctor, you talked about trials and research. And for these trials and research to be successful, we need to have participants who will be fully engaged in these trials. Are there any incentives for these participants?
Yeah, this is the exciting part of research and why it's so critical to have Africans involved in research, because we really need to understand how any treatment, in this case it's a vaccine, but you could say the same for any hypertension, diabetes drug or any other drug. So this is why this is so exciting and important. We are going to take part in helping to develop a vaccine globally. So for research in general, the regulators define what the incentives are. And those incentives are really designed not so much as a compensation, but to cover your transport and your time. So we certainly do have incentives within this study that will cover people's time and transport, and really hope that we are engaging people who want to advance science and help us understand how vaccines work in African populations.
All right, so I think that is perhaps the catch one for here. African vaccination populations, vaccines, and genetics, African genetics. Now, Doctor, I'm sure you may have had, tests in the lab before coming forward to the public. However, how effective is it as regards reducing the transmissibility? How transmissible is going to be?
Yes, so any vaccine is first rigorously tested in the laboratory and in preclinical animal studies. So we know that this vaccine is immunogenic in animal studies and generates antibodies that are cross-reactive against the strains that are being tested. In addition, a version of this vaccine, a univariate, so only covering the original Wuhan strain, has been in phase 1-2 studies in Australia. This one that we are testing, as I mentioned, is unique in that it's bivariant. It covers 2 different strains, and so is undergoing the initial testing here in Zimbabwe. So our first preclinical data suggests that it is immunogenic and safe in animal models. And then really it is the data that we will generate from this study that will let us know the immunogenicity and the actual cross-reactivity from the antibodies generated in African patients against the viral variants that are known and emerging that we will test from the samples obtained in this study.
Right. Now, Dr. TARIRO, you've also heard the story of African countries that have been banned to some other countries outside the African continent. What are your thoughts with regards to the Omicron variant and Africa being penalized for its existence?
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. So travel bans are something that you can understand politicians jumping to, but the scientific and epidemiologic evidence behind it is that they really slow down transmission rather than block transmission within a country. So I think that travel bans are not a good idea. And I think that it's not scientific to base the travel bans on Southern Africa, where Southern Africa actually stepped up. We had scientists in Botswana, Zimbabwean scientists in Botswana being part of the first identification, scientists in South Africa being part of the identification. And we really want to encourage scientists all over the world to sequence and publicly release their data. We should not be implementing penalizing measures because it's not clear that this virus came from Africa to begin with. But we did the right thing. The African countries did the right thing by alerting the world and enabling the world to act quickly. So I do hope that the nations who made these knee-jerk, politically targeted decisions really reconsider and use science to guide the decisions that they make moving forward.
All right, so with Zimcovax it is, so clinical trials already started, so let's see how it goes, and we hope that Zimbabweans take up the offer to contribute in this research. Well, thank you so much once again for your time, Dr. TARIRO MAKADZANGE, the CEO and founder of Charles River Medical Group out there in Zimbabwe, for joining us this morning on Breakfast Central.